Hey cycling community, this is Steve Bruce, the Cycling Greek. Today I'm talking about what it takes to put on a bike race, more specifically the OTF Off the Front Omnium featuring the Budweiser Sequoia Cycling Classic. I am working with a couple of the promoters in putting this event on. I am taking care of the 2 Saturday races and the overall Omnium organization, and the other promoters are taking care of their Sunday race, which is the Sequoia Cycling Classic in Visalia. What I do is I work backwards. I start with the race date. So this year it's going to be May 28th and 29th. I then go back 2 months because that's where I have to submit the permit to USAC, the USA Cycling Federation. If I submit the permit within 2 months of the race, then the permit fees go a lot higher. So to be able to submit the permit, I have to have a race flyer. In order to have a race flyer, I have to have the prize list defined. In order to have the prize list defined, I have to have a budget. In order to have a budget, I need to know where my money is coming from and where it's going out to. So let's start with where the money is going out to, the costs. Some of the costs include, but not limited to, officials. Gas for the officials. For a multi-day race such as this, lodging for the officials. If I have motos, I have to have special fees for the motos, and possibly officials for those motos and gas for the motos themselves. There's also porta potties, advertising. For smaller races, I really don't have to worry about advertising, but this is a higher class race, so we're already advertising Southern California's newsletter, calendar I should say. There's food, there's municipal permits. I don't have to worry about any municipal permits because this is being held in Ventana Hills Estates. Ventana Hills Estates is a development of one of my major sponsors, Granville Homes. Now, on the Sunday's race, it's going to be in downtown Visalia, so they get a permit from the city. They also have to purchase police time, so there's going to be 1 or 2 police out there, so that can run probably $1,000 for that race, just for that one race there. There's registration. I contract that out. I've been working with this one person for a number of years, and she is well worth the money. There is also the finish line setup. Now, last year, Sequoia Cycling Classic used a very fancy, high-class finish line. They had a structure that went over the road. You can put advertisements on it, and in which they had advertisements. They had a lot of sponsors over there. And they had a stage set up for the music that they supplied and for the officials. And of course, fancy and high class means that it costs a lot of money. Now you can go the other end and go, for those of you that are familiar with the Velopromo truck, which is its own stage. It's not as fancy, but it definitely gets the job done. That doesn't cost as much. Now ordinarily I go with the Velopromo truck because that's usually the type of races I put on, but now this, coupling with Visalia, is a much higher class race. The appropriate thing for me to do is pay more money and go with that higher end finish line. But that all is going to depend on how the money is going to turn out in the budget. And that's going to be defined in about a week and a half when we have our deadline meeting for establishing the race flyer, including the prize list. So now, money coming in, the revenues, usually comes in from 2 areas, registrations and sponsorship. So registrations, we'll do that one first. What you have to put into the budget is a number of registrations that you are comfortable that you are going to receive. And so that means you have to be conservative. Last year, Sequoia Cycling Classic received 320 registrations. And that was on a bad weekend. They were going up against the Wente Road Race, which usually draws 600 to 800 riders from the Northern District. There were some races down south, but they weren't as high-end as Wente was. Now, more important to me is that the day before there was a crit in Fresno. And that was put on by another local promoter, and it was a crit around a church. So very small-scale race. And it was raining that day, and they still pulled in 115 registrations, which is pretty good for Fresno. So the number that I first used was 200 registrations for the circuit race and 100 registrations for the hill climb time trial. I later found out that the Southern District is having their league championships for the 1s and 2s, so I went and decreased my registrations. I went from 200 to 150 for the circuit race and from 100 to 75 for the hill climb time trial, and I'm still nervous. Now the other area is sponsorships. Because I am coupling with the Visalia Cycling Classic, a couple of my sponsors from last year stepped up in a big way that I very much appreciate. Their sponsorship, plus a few other sponsorships that I've received, I now have a little more than the greatest amount of money I've ever raised in any of my races before. So, where am I sitting with the budget? In spite of all the information I gave you with increased sponsorships, this is a higher end race, so there's a lot more cost involved. I'm about $2,000 in the hole. I need to find at least $2,000 before our deadline meeting in about 2 weeks, 10 days. And if I don't, then I have to start cutting costs. Where those costs are coming from, it can come from the finish line, it can come from the prize list. So I have some work to do in the next 11 days. So this is what goes on with putting on a race, particularly before day of. Day of is a whole nother matter. We can talk about that in the future. So if you have any comments, please leave them below. If you like this, hit like, subscribe to The Cycling Greek. And if you like this, share this with someone else. Until next time, The Cycling Greek.